All right. I don't like it when new buttons pop up and that I haven't seen before. Anyway, we have people from London, Toronto, um, Washington, D.C. It's great to see everybody on the webinar today. So let's just get started. I told you about myself, and I'd really like to know what drew you to attend this session today. So again, I'd love to have an interactive, informal session. So if you'd be willing to say why you chose to attend, that would be great.
I'm quite happy to start, Diane, so I can get the ball rolling. My background, so I worked in financial services as a project manager for about 10 years, based in the city of London. Moved to Switzerland 2 years ago to work in consulting, and I've been doing some training with Udacity. So I've done a data visualization course, looking to transition into a data analyst, dashboard design type of profile, and also looking to change the industry. So coming out of the financial services and looking at other industry. So I get what I'm trying to figure out is what's the best way to leverage your experience from your previous life into your new career transition and not having to start from scratch. Also how to sort of leverage some transferable skills that you may have learn from your previous experience, and how to market myself into the program.
Great. That's a common one. How do we make use of our previous career as we move into something new, and how do we highlight our transferable skills? Certainly on my list today to talk about. So thank you, Charles. Who else would be willing to share why they signed up today? Hello?
Yeah,
Hi,
this is Frederick.
Hi. How are you?
Pretty much the same questions that Charles have. I'm 40 now, almost 41 years old. I live in Dominican Republic, and I've been developing software since the late 90s. Technology is a very competitive sector. We have now a bunch of new areas and many young people, which we have to be, at the same level. So at some point, to get tired to be, trying to be at the same level of guys of 20s, and most of my fellow students at university, they moved to USA or other countries. So they moved to a top level. Now I started another degree. I am not planning to move from the technology sector area. Do something different. Instead of just developing software, I would like to move to not administrative, but something more to try to add more value. Maybe to start my business, or to be a level I can be more like a consultant or something like that. That's what what I would like to know is, well, the same question that Charles, how to do that transition the less painly way.
Okay, that makes perfect sense. So I think there are many people who are doing what you're doing, and I hear that opening a line as you gave me. You talked about your age, and you're still relatively young, but I think many of us feel it's very common to feel like we are competing with a much younger workforce, with who many have excellent technology skills, and so we're looking to do this transition in the least painful way, right? Okay, thank you for sharing that. All right, so we're going to go ahead and kind of jump into the presentation today. Again, I'd like this to be not just me giving insight, but having others of you give your insight and your experience, because it's very relevant. I mean, this is something that's helpful to share with each other what our experience has been. So that was what I was hoping for today. So we'll go ahead and move into the agenda. We're going to talk about you know, some of the common challenges that we all face, come up with some ideas and share some ideas for overcoming those challenges. And as some of you said, you know, you want to know how to leverage what you have in your career. You don't want to throw that out. How can you make use of some of the very strong skills that you have and experiences you have, and how can you leverage that as you move into a new realm? Okay. All right. So just in terms of getting this conversation going, I'd like to know, maybe in 1 or 2 words from each person, whether you choose to share on the chat or if you will unmute yourself. Just give me 1 or 2 words of the challenge you feel like you're facing.
So if I can start, I think relevant experience. It's not just experience, but actually relevant experience into the new role is, you know, sometimes, you know, something that comes up a lot. Yeah.
Okay, very true. Thanks, Charles. Someone else?
This is Monideep from London, and I think I agree with Charles as well. That's what my experience has been. That we have a lot of experience, but the relevant experience is the exact category where we seem to be lacking a lot.
Okay, okay, great. Mandeep, thank you so much. Who else? One challenge you feel like you're facing. Oh, okay, I'm sorry. Not knowing exactly which field to go to next. Yeah, uncertainty about, you know, what's the best option for yourself. That makes sense. And that's something we can talk about today in terms of, you know, finding that area where we can excel and bring our past experience to bear. Daniela also agrees with lack of relevant experience. Ah, salary, there it is. I was hoping someone would bring that up. We'll talk about salary today. Something that's a better fit. Excellent. Yeah. Yeah, you know, at this time in our lives, when we decide to make a change, or a change is forced upon us, which sometimes is the case, right? What we want to do with that is hopefully shift into something where, you know, we can really enjoy the rest of our career, do something we really love. Okay, lack of professional network with industry practitioners. Very key. That networking part is so important. Lauren says whether there are certain areas where a relevant academic degree is required. Had that question just this morning with a client. Do I need to go back to school and get a master's in computer science? Those kinds of questions are out there. You know, when is my experience enough to offset the need for a degree? All right. Well, thank you. Thank you for sharing. And it's not too late. I have another guest waiting. I'll go ahead and invite them. Okay. All right. Just a second here. I think we'll go ahead and lock the meeting. There we go. All right. That way I can focus. All right. Okay, so let's get into the discussion. And I think you all hit on most of these. common challenges that we face at career transition time. And, you know, this can apply in the beginning of a career too. All of these things, many of these things can apply, but these are more common for those of us who are making a change at the midlife area. And that's a wide range of ages. I don't think there's a particular age that we can consider midlife, but I sort of categorize it as the time period after you've worked for a while, okay? And maybe you've worked in a certain industry and then you're looking to make a shift. And that shift might be very subtle, meaning you just tweak some things about what your focus is, or it could be very drastic. You know, people coming from a non-technical area into a technical area, that could be a pretty drastic change. Okay, so what do you all think about the list that I have here? Any of these particularly stand out as something you want to make sure we talk about today?
Yeah, sure.
Okay. Ashraf? Okay. Which one of these resonates with you the most?
For me personally, I would say over or underqualified.
Okay. Okay, great. All right. All right. Personal values aligning with responsibility of the new role and confidence. Okay. Yeah, you know, that's so true. What I hear from a lot of students really is that the reason they're making a change is because they want to have a different impact on the world, on their community. Let me just take a minute and ask that question. You know, the very first question I have on this slide is explaining why to your new employer or maybe even to your colleagues. So let me ask you your why. Who would be willing to share why, very briefly, why you want to change your career?
I guess in my case, wanted to make an impact on a different level. So changing industry, changing role to actually make an impact.
So if I were to ask you, you feel like your previous career maybe didn't have the kind of impact that aligns with personal values, or was it something else?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay. Okay. Yeah, oftentimes it is the personal value reason. So great. Thanks for sharing. Who else might give me a quick why they're making a change?
Sometimes the feeling of missing out on another opportunity, or like you feel that there is something more to do than your current job.
Okay. More to do, like maybe in terms of purpose?
Exactly.
Okay. Okay. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, and let's be honest. I think, at least in my experience, as we, you know, move up chronologically, is that a good way to say we get older? We oftentimes place more value on having an impact in this world, having a purpose, something that really drives us to, you know, get up in the morning and do something as a vocation that doesn't feel like work. And the reason it wouldn't feel like work is because we love it and we're really making a difference. So that's not uncommon, particularly at midlife. Okay. Anybody else want to share their why?
Frederick.
Yes, hi, Frederick.
In my case, I really love what I do. And I feel that I'm a great company. It's been growing since all this what is happening now in the world. But I've been in my industry, that is technology. I've been since the beginning giving like branches. I first started in the working as part of the insurance company. I was working in that field for a while. Then I moved to the telecommunications sector in my area, of course, and now I am in a different sector, which is more interesting. And I've been in one company for 4 years. That's a big deal because I never took more than 2 years in a company. But there are a bunch of new employees, young people with, I think I feel it, or they are faster learners, or I am getting, I don't know. I don't know if it's has something to do with that I am growing a family and have more thoughts, more concerns, but I don't feel that I am solving problems as fast as they do and as I used to do. Also, one of the fields that I am interested in is the machine learning area. I've been trying to investigate. I love research. And what I'm doing now is just like more like a mechanical procedures, and it can get quite boring.
Okay. So I hear, thank you for sharing that, Frederick. I hear you want to continue to do interesting work and you want it to be a good fit for where you're at in your life. You want to continue to do problem solving. It sounds like that's an area where you're maybe recognizing a change, but you still have a sincere interest in being of value. So we're going to talk about that. And I think, you did a nice job of kind of covering a lot of ground for us today about the reasons. And one of the things that will become very important as each of you tell your story about why is to figure out how to present that in a way that is engaging and gets the interest and piques the interest. So you're going to tell your story in a number of different places. You're going to tell it on LinkedIn. You're going to talk about it in your cover letter. Each of those messages is going to be slightly different. You're going to be prepared to talk about it in an interview. You want to practice your elevator pitch with your colleagues so that it becomes kind of a natural story that you can feel comfortable talking about. So thank you so much for sharing. All right. Okay, so we got some input on why, and as expected, each one of us has a different reason for making a change. So, I think that it's important for us to hit some of these that you all brought up, and so I think I want to make sure before we run out of time that we talk about relevant experience. So let me do this. Let me put this back out to the group. Who here on the session today has had an experience translating their past skills and talents and gifts into something related to their new career? Who's had that experience? And who could share some ideas with us? Anyone? Monideep? Yes, hi Monideep.
Hey, so I'm a software engineer, and I've been picking up machine learning. And one of the challenges that I've had is, of course, as a software engineer, I have the background of and the skill of writing programs. But one of the challenges is to be able to showcase that ability to write program somehow also is very, very not applicable, but very crucial for a machine learning engineering position as well. Because if I look at the, let's say, a distribution of other candidates, obviously someone applying to a machine learning position would also have coding background as well. So how do I differentiate myself using my skills that I already have to really stand out? Because at the end of the day, it's a machine learning one, right? A machine learning position. So, and that's where I have just started. So that's where I feel I am lacking in a way to make that successful career transition.
Okay. So let me ask you this question. In your software engineering background, what's one key thing that made you the most successful?
Problem solving, the ability to take a problem and be able to solve it, basically transform it into a technical way, so that take a business problem and translate it into a way to program something and solve that out.
And then how does that same thing relate to machine learning?
It kind of does from an overall perspective. You have to solve the problem per se, but machine learning, the overall way of thinking in machine learning is a little bit different, wherein instead of writing a program, you would now focus on the data to let the program learn from the data. So that's a different paradigm of thinking towards problem solving. While this is obviously an acquired skill you pick up along the way, and I have been doing that, but to showcase that experience in doing that, right? I think that's where I've been lacking a bit. I feel that's where is a challenge for me. Of course, I've done projects, side projects, but the lack of industry experience, if I can say that, is somewhere, I feel I tend to get behind other candidates who may be applying for the same position.
Okay, so let me just ask the group. Anyone have suggestions for Monadeep? I told you this was going to be interactive.
Well, I have almost the same problem as him, so.
Okay. All right.
Maybe all we need suggest.
Okay. Here's MK to everyone. Do a project based on open source data sets.
Yeah, I think something I can also suggest from what helped me with my transition is actually joining online communities and creating projects. So I think for software development, just having a really good GitHub profile and actually work on open source projects and build a portfolio to actually serve. I've got experience of work I've done in that space, so that's something I've been doing with the Tableau community. So of joining the Tableau community, there's a lot of on Twitter, there's a lot of weekly challenge you can do with various data sets, and you can learn from other people as well. So I think the online community side is surely a really good way to ramp up your profile with that new skill sets.
Excellent. Thanks for sharing that, Charles. So getting out there and trying out your skills. The other one, and I'm curious to know how you all feel about actually getting out and doing some freelance work in your new field.
Yeah, that is one of the suggestions that I've gotten from one of my other friends as well. So yes, that is something that I'll have to take up.
Okay.
Yeah,
and it can be a little bit frightening to put yourself out there. I think that's something many of us share is, will I actually have what it takes to get that freelance work? But those are real world experiences that you can add to your portfolio. The other one that comes up that I've heard suggested and I've suggested to clients is to get out there and volunteer your new skills to businesses, to nonprofits, to other entities who might benefit from your new skills. Many of them are in a difficult situation right now. You can offer some limited term project work, either for no pay or low pay. And I don't know how that resonates with some of you.
I think at least for me, it resonates pretty well. Just one question. I mean, is there an aggregator site or something where people do sponsor this non-profit kind of a work? Or I mean, if anyone knows, that would be great. Otherwise, I'll definitely do my research online.
I think LinkedIn works really well for that. You know, I've seen a lot of thread of, you know, people from, you know, various experience who say, I'm a, you know, data scientist. I want to offer my, you know, new skills to any business, and then just having people to share. And, you know, those things, they can have a huge snowball effect. So I think LinkedIn is a good platform for that.
Yeah. Yeah. Thank you. Okay. There is a volunteer site in the States. I don't know. Where are you from? You're from Toronto?
I'm from London.
Oh, I'm sorry. Okay. But I do think LinkedIn there's so many ways to search LinkedIn and to use it, you know, just to try to identify, you know, entities that might be looking, particularly if you start with groups. You can, you know, try nonprofit groups, you can look for incubators, that kind of thing, and look for people who are affiliated with those kinds of entities where you might, you know, small businesses in your local area. Sometimes looking locally, even if you're doing remote work, is a good idea. People may feel different level of trust if they know that they could actually meet with you, perhaps, if it was safe to do so. So, okay.
Right.
All right.
Thanks for the suggestions.
Okay. Well, thank you for being willing to share your challenge, and thanks to everyone for the input. In the interest of time, we are going to move on to some other topics. One of the things that comes up is the over-under qualified issue. It's, you know, it's one of those things where, you know, you feel like you have a lot to offer, and you come into this transition having attained a certain level, either in salary or title or both, and a certain level of autonomy and responsibility. And then you find yourself in a situation where you barely meet the qualifications of the new role. And, you know, it can be challenging. So really, you know, one of the key things that I recommend is that you spend a lot of time with the job descriptions. And if you're, you know, let's say you're trying to go into consulting or trying to open your own business, you can still use job postings and job vacancy announcements to help you determine what the typical requirements are in that particular role. So, you know, going out and doing what, you know, some structured job description research, pulling 4 or 5 job vacancy announcements in that field, and identifying some common themes in terms of what kinds of skills they're asking for, and then figuring out where you are in terms of your own skills meeting those needs. The thing that I recommend that you focus on in this situation are your soft skills. Okay, many of the jobs will ask for things like problem solving and conflict resolution, ability to work on teams, good communication skills. Typically, those are things that, you know, we've had experience with in our previous careers. And that's where you leverage your yourself as an asset. Thinking about examples where you excelled in those areas, writing those examples down so that they're easier to recall when you're speaking in an interview, or you're, you know, maybe talking about your past experience in a cover letter. You know, reframe those situations. If you've had an excellent example of where you were part of a team and a conflict came up, or a big problem, you know, talk about the role that you played. Recall what you did that was unique in that situation. How did you help move things along? And those are very important. And, you know, being in the HR role for many years, I was involved in many, many searches. And, you know, the behavioral questions were big, at least in the HR world. Those are the ones where we really assess suitability for positions. And yes, the technical skills were important, and I don't want to minimize that, particularly in the technology fields. But really, you know, spending some time ahead of time thinking about those soft skills that you have and how those translate into the new skill requirements is really important. So I'm going to stop talking now and ask for comments on that point, or concerns or questions. Anyone? Okay. All right. Okay. Do we want to talk about ageism? What do you think? Is it real or imagined? Want to make thoughts?
This is Monideep. I haven't faced ageism, but I think it's not an imaginary one. I'm pretty sure
Okay.
it is faced.
Okay. Okay. Great. So here are some things I want to, and I have a slide on this. Probably have other slides, but I really wanted us to kind of, let me get to that slide, just a second. Okay, we talked about explaining the why. Okay, so here's my spiel on ageism. Yes, it can happen. And it's, for the most part, out of our control as to how hiring managers determine how much this factors in, okay? So I think that the best thing is to focus on what you can control. And this is another thing where you spend quite a bit of time ahead of time thinking about, you know, what is it about your place in life, your age, if you want, your experience that's brought you to this point that makes you an asset. And, you know, what is it you're competing with? So when I think about those things, the attributes that come to mind are on this slide. Be a person that shows flexibility. If you are open to new ideas, you've had experience with change, if you've worked for any length of time at any employer, you've had changes that have caused you to have to adapt. And so think about a time when you did that and how you did that. Keep your skills up to date. And I doubt that anybody on this call has that challenge. I think many of the Udacity students are in a good place because they are willing to learn new skills and keep their, you know, be up on leading technology. But you also need to do your research, you know, read a lot, get out there and read blogs or write your own blog, stay up on the latest. It's very important for the employer to see that, you know, you don't have your head in the sand, that not only are you demonstrating by taking a Udacity course or other courses to keep your skills up to date, that you're actually active out in that industry. Okay, you know, use your experience as an asset. Think about, you know, what it is about you at this point in time that would make you an asset to a future employee. Being willing to do what it takes, it's easy to think, okay, I've worked 20 years of my career, I've attained a certain level of professionalism, certain job responsibilities might be beneath me. I'm going to assume that none of you have that mindset, but if you do, and it's not uncommon, challenge yourself on that. Be able to give examples of in the past where you were willing to step out of your role and help someone complete a project or problem solve outside of the scope of your job. Anything where you can demonstrate that you're resilient and you bounce back. Primarily staying positive is a very important thing to do when you're in the interview and you're talking with employers. So if you could take this list and prior to an interview, think about examples of where you did this. Those would be great examples to have in your back pocket when you go for an interview. As an employer, that's what I would be looking for. It would matter less to me about someone's age and more about how they were resilient and flexible and they had a learning mindset. So I'll stop there and ask for reactions and thoughts and challenges to what I've said.
I think it makes sense because as someone who would have spent years on a different technology, on a different way of doing things, if you're moving to another field, another company, you would always want to the new employee to be in line with the company culture, the way things are done in the new field. So that way, I think it makes sense to be flexible and adaptable. To the new situation, to the new technology, to the new role altogether. Because at the end of the day, you will have to work with your team in a very cohesive manner. And if you can't do that, I think you won't be able to help your team and the company move forward.
Okay. Any other thoughts? Thank you, Monadeep. So these are the things that we can control. We can't really control how the hiring manager makes their decision, but we certainly can, play up this aspect of our past career and show that, we're not locked in our mindset. We're not done learning. Those things are very important. So, okay. Any other comments? Okay, let's talk about salary. Let me find my salary slide. Where do we go here? I don't know where it went. Sorry. Oh, it's right here. Okay.
Just to finish, sorry, Diane, on the
yes, no, go ahead. Yes,
yes. That's something I was actually joining some workshop with people in their mid-50s, etc. And I was surprised that people would introduce themselves and say, I'm 50 odd years and work in a company, etc. I think there's probably a stigma. I think that's a society stigma that now if you're unemployed and in your 50s, you fall into that bucket. But that's something you can challenge, yourself. And I think, touch wood, don't know well being when I'm in my mid 50s, but all that experience, all that, maturity, there's a lot of things you can leverage from a younger generation. So, learning new skills and, adapting, I think, everything you've listed, that's, what, helps. So I think, there's probably like a huge stigma on ageism, but,
sure.
It's not, something I think you can overcome that as any other challenges.
Right. Thank you for sharing that perspective, Charles. Yeah, absolutely. I think we get fearful about those things because they are stigmas, and we've heard examples and horror stories of other people who maybe have experienced something like that. So thank you for sharing that. Okay, so let's talk quickly about salary as we're kind of running out of time. You know, I think this is something that there's several things I'll comment on salary. As you're moving into a new field, it makes sense to spend a little time researching the salary expectations. I think sometimes people, you know, don't realize how important it is to have realistic expectations on salary. And it is one of the key challenges of moving into a different field. Sometimes you might end up in a field where the salary possibilities are greater than you've ever had before. So that's a different situation, but it's not uncommon to, especially after working 15, 20 years in a certain field, to have risen to the level where you're making a pretty decent salary, you have a pretty high level responsibility, and then now you're making a change. Maybe it was a change that was brought upon you, or maybe you made a conscious choice to move into a different industry or a different area. So doing some salary research on the internet even to kind of get a sense of what are the salaries, and then going ahead and applying for some jobs and see what the salary offers are. But talking to some people who are in the field on LinkedIn, trying to make some connections, getting a ballpark range of salaries for the new job, you know, and then you have to ask yourself, can I realistically bear this kind of a salary? And if you can't, you need to get creative. You either change what you're going after, or you need to think about cobbling together a couple of things. Maybe you're working a part-time gig to supplement while you move into a salary range and then give yourself some time for growth. Another thing that's, I think, really important is you know, many people do have salary flexibility. I've heard from many who say, you know, I've got some flexibility for this reason or that. And what they're worried about most is the employer thinking they don't, right? And MK asks, is there a way to negotiate a higher salary in the field by leveraging your experience? We'll talk about that in a minute. But I think you don't want to let an employer's fear about you wanting to be paid too much money get in the way. So what you can do in that case is be knowledgeable about the salary, the market salary ranges. And if you feel like, you know, a hiring manager might anticipate for some reason that you would need a higher salary, it's okay to bring that up. And you can do it diplomatically in a cover letter even. There are ways to word it based on, you know, I realize that, you know, given my past experience, there could be some concern about my salary flexibility. And I wanted to let you know that the most important thing to me in this job transition is moving into an area where I can have a greater impact, and that to offset this, I am certainly open to you know, negotiating salary, something like that. That's not a perfect statement, but you get the drift of what I'm saying. It's okay to bring that up if you think, hey, you came from a field where the salaries are very high, you're moving into a different role, you realize the salary might be lower. And sometimes that can make the difference between you getting put in the yes pile at an interview screening or not. Thoughts on that?
Yeah, I guess, you know, the way I try to approach those, you know, difficult discussion is looking at the range as well. So, you know, let the recruiter, you know, assess based on your experience and really sort of, embodying everything we've discussed in terms of transferable skills and, the value you add from your experience, but also looking at, what is outside just the financial package, because, there can be a lot of additional perks, training, pensions, and any other thing that, would actually come as part of the package. And sometimes, not, hitting that, net salary or, discussion by actually looking at what else there is, and we might, see some other perks that, would have, also their benefits. So, actually looking at that side, and that sort of, makes the salary discussion, more bearable, I think.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for bringing that point up. That's absolutely appropriate in this circumstance to look at the whole package. And I do find that many people making a change already do have some idea about the salary level. So I think it's, doing a little bit more work to make sure you understand the whole package is really important. Okay. So MK asked a question about negotiating a higher salary in a new field by leveraging your experience. Absolutely, and that's part of the discussion. You're going to put your best self forward in your cover letter, in your interview, in a sort of indirect way. It's your job to point out why you would be an asset in this role, and talk about how your past experience translates into the new field. Why is it that they should hire you? Why will you be an asset in that role to that company? And it's your job to connect the dots for that employer. And by doing this in advance, you set yourself up. If there is a possibility of negotiating a higher starting salary, you've already laid the groundwork for that. And I'm not saying in every opportunity you can always negotiate higher, but if you lay the groundwork well in the interview process and all the stages leading up to that, you have a much better chance of pushing for a slightly higher salary. Okay. All right. Okay, so I do want to hit on a couple of other things. I think someone brought up the networking and not being connected in the network as well in the industry. And really, you have a lot of control over that. Getting out there and acting as if you are already in the industry. And I don't mean that in a misleading way, but starting to connect with people who are doing the kind of work that you want to be doing at the companies you might want to work for, and joining the professional groups, starting to look at what people are writing and not just liking the things that people are writing about, but actually adding an additional comment. You want to do it in a genuine and authentic way, and you don't want to do it every time, but in order to get noticed in the industry, you need to be active out on LinkedIn and some of your other connections, attending events that are in your industry, whether it's on Eventbrite or some other meetup groups. This is an area where people are maybe not maximizing their opportunity as often. It's a lot of work, but it's well worth it. It pays off. It's that act as if, really means that it looks like you are already doing that in some way. So other thoughts and other ideas along this line?
Yeah, I think everything you've listed up, sorry, Frederick, but just quickly. So everything you've listed, Diane, makes sense. Join the online communities that is relevant to you, new skill set or new career, and then you'll build up a network very quickly.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's really worthwhile. I tell my clients to carve out a little bit of time each day or 3 times a week to actually get in the habit of cultivating this network. Spend time growing your network each day and spend time working the network. it's very important. There are a lot of aspects to this career transition, and you absolutely need to spend time on all of them, but you must carve out some time for the networking piece. And this needs to become a lifelong habit. This isn't about just when I'm looking for a job. This is about a way of being in the world, especially nowadays with social media so prevalent. It's very important that you get comfortable in this space. And then as things start to open up safely, don't be afraid to get out there in person and do the same thing. It's very important. And you can be a help to others as well. So on that point, and we are running out of time, are there any just burning questions that we didn't get to today that you'd like to bring up?
I don't have a question, but just to point out that what you said, one of the key things in when moving to a different area, as I told, I started working in insurance, then to telecommunications. And one of the things that help is to try, as you said, to find communities. At least in the area, in the technology area, there are a lot of events. Now they are online, but there are always the technology people. There is always eager to help. If you want to have a question, or if you want to connect to a community, communities are all sometimes separated or split by language, programming language, or by technology, machine learning, for example. There are many. You will be always welcome. If you have it can be challenging for some people who is doesn't have this social abilities to communicate with other. But if you want to, or at least if you try to ask someone to help you, you can be sure that they will.
That's great.
In my experience.
Yes, that's an excellent point, and I think we've all kind of learned that by trial and error. So thank you for mentioning that. It really kind of helps people feel more comfortable to approach others, and that kind of segues into the last question that was asked. How about creating opportunities? And I framed this slide exactly that way for a purpose. You might have noticed my first bullet on the first slide said find opportunities. I'm a firm believer in that we can create opportunities, and we create them in a number of ways. We first start with envisioning the ideal for ourselves. Spend some time dreaming and write down what you think. Ask yourself the question, if I could create the ideal scenario to use my new skills and move into the area I want to move, what would that look like? What would I be doing? What would that be called? Who would I be doing it for? And really push yourself on the dream and write it down. And then take elements of that and start to do searches. Do open-ended searches on the internet. Find out which fields are in demand now. How can your particular skills fit into that industry? Can your chosen profession apply in that field? Reach out to people. Find people who might be potential partners. Talk about the possibilities. You never know where that might end up in terms of an opportunity for you. And then get creative in how you use your skills. We talked about freelancing, and creating your own internship is still a possibility. And reaching out to organizations that could use volunteers and demonstrating your skills. Join groups that pertain to your skills and the industry you're interested in. Read what they're writing. Follow the influencers. Go to events. Find people who are doing what you would like to be doing and find out how they made the transition. Now, one thing that people sometimes overlook and are afraid to push the boundaries is if they're, say they've been employed with an employer for a while and they want to make a shift in their career, but it's still related to the field that they're in. Talk to people in positions of influence and power at your employer. Ask about, share your goals. Ask about, maybe I'm interested in doing this and I realize we have another department that does that work. How could I, how could I move into that area? What's possible for me? And it doesn't work all the time. But if you're making a transition, if you can do it at a current employer that you've had good success with, that's all the better. And then maybe you move on from there, or maybe not. Maybe you stay with that employer. So anyway, so I've really enjoyed this time with you. You all have a wealth of information to offer, and I've really appreciated the interaction and the sharing. And so I hope that I know we barely scratched the surface on a few things, so I apologize for that, but I hope that you leave this session with some new ideas. And that's the whole point of today, is to challenge your thinking, and hopefully you'll come up with some actions from what happened today that will push you forward.
Thank you very much, Diane. That was very useful, very insightful, and thank you to the team as well to share the experience. It's always really good to interact in that way.
Right.
So, thank you.
Thank you, Charles, always for your participation. Great. Everybody stay safe and well.
Sure. Thanks, Dan. Thanks.
All right.
Thanks.
Thank you. Thanks, everyone.
Bye-bye.
Thank you very much.
Oh, you're welcome. Thank you for your participation, Frederick.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye-bye.